Did you know feeling frustrated, angry, resentful in your practice is actually costing you time, money, energy, productivity? Well, if you didn't know that, now you know. And if you want to learn more on how to regain your productivity and regain your time and energy, keep listening. Welcome to another episode. Let me just start by inviting you to my brand new workshop, The Hidden Cost of Frustration in Your Law Practice. Stop getting angry and start reclaiming your time, energy, and sanity. You can sign up now at dinacataldo.com/frustrated lawyer. That's dinacataldo.com/frustrated lawyer. I am creating this workshop because I see so many preventable issues popping up in law practices that are wasting so much energy and time and focus. They're easy to solve if you know the right questions to ask yourself, if you take the time to really think through solutions. And I am going to give you that space during this workshop. We're going to be doing it webinar style. So nobody else is going to see you on screen. Nobody's going to know you're there. You're going to have the opportunity to ask me questions in the Q&A box that no one else will see. I will be there to walk you through whatever specific issues you are having. And when you do this and you start reducing your frustration, you start reducing the anger, because there's really a low level anger that can come up when we are practicing law that we're really good at hiding. But when you start making solutions to the angers and the frustrations and the resentments, you will begin to see your life change. I see this over and over again, not only when I was applying what I'm talking about here, but when my clients are doing this and I'm asking them questions to start helping them clean up these areas where they're feeling angry, they're feeling resentful, they start to change their practices. They start to feel more in control. They feel more confident. They start to really boost their self-confidence because they're focusing more on what they want and what they need. And they're starting to recognize that it's possible to make these changes in just these tiny shifts. So what I wanted to offer in this workshop is these shifts for you so that you get access to the questions that I'm asking my clients that are getting them results. So go to dinacataldo.com/frustrated lawyer, register now so that you can be in this workshop, get access to me, hear the questions. And yes, if you can't make it on the date that it's happening, I'm going to send out a replay only to those who sign up and register now for this workshop. But I highly recommend you make every effort to show up live, because when you do, you will be giving yourself the space to solve for these problems in your practice and make a real change. Because it's really easy to sign up for things and then not go. It's really easy to say, oh, I'll do that later. When you start making yourself a priority, you begin to see these shifts happen. It's when we put ourselves last on our to-do list, it's when we put ourselves last on the who are the people that matters list that we begin to suffer. And so we need to be able to put ourselves first and take a look at what's going on in our lives, so that we can make the changes we need to see. So sign up now, put it on your calendar, and make every effort to show up live. Sign up at dinacataldo.com/frustrated lawyer for the hidden cost of frustration in your law practice. And we're really going to clean up these areas. Let me tell you a story about me when I was about maybe 2 years into my law practice. I was a young prosecutor. I had just finished up a stint in preliminary hearings, and you get moved into the trial position pretty quickly, felony trials pretty quickly. I had already done a stint in misdemeanor trials, done calendar courts, done misdemeanor domestic violence. I mean, doing lots and lots of different cases. And now I was being put in the felony trial unit. And I was really excited about this. I thought, yes, this is me finally getting to prove that I belong here, that I'm a good lawyer, all the things, right? But here's what happened when I got promoted to this position. I stepped into a caseload that was disorganized because the person who had it didn't have the skills they needed to be organized either. They were newer attorneys. They were a newer attorney. They didn't really know what they were doing. They were really good at receiving a case that had already been worked up and taking it to trial and getting it a good result. That's called a handoff if you're not familiar with that lingo, where an attorney will work up a case, they'll have subpoenaed everybody, they will have really detailed all the issues with the case, they will have spoken to all the witnesses, they'll have subpoenaed everybody, lined everybody up, made sure it was completely prepared for trial, had all the exhibits prepared, everything should be done. And then that handoff is given to an attorney, could be the morning of trial. And that's something that every prosecutor, at least in my office, would do, because you just have so many trials and you can't control the court and how these cases are put in order to courtrooms. So you just had to be ready. Every single case that had a day count, and every trial is on a timeline, right? Or it gets dismissed. So you've got to have these cases ready, and you have to have a warm body ready to take the case to trial. So that was something that he was really good at doing. If a case was already prepared, they could take it to trial, get a good result. And so this person was really well liked in our office. He was a really nice guy. But this caseload, I got to tell you, it had a lot to be desired. And I think I've talked about this on this podcast before, because it was such an interesting experience for me looking back on it and how I dealt with the situation. Because I had about 50 trials and none of them were on the calendar. None of them were subpoenaed. They had investigation in a lot of cases had been requested. So if there were surveillance or fingerprints or any additional witness statements that we needed, those kinds of things were ordered. But there was a giant stack. It had to have been a foot, maybe a foot and a half high, of investigation that needed to be discovered. Now, as a prosecutor, at least in the big office I was in Sacramento, we didn't have secretaries, we didn't have assistants who would help make copies, bait stamp things, send them out to the opposing counsel offices. We didn't have any of that. So we were responsible for all of it. All right. So when I share with you what I learned in this podcast, I have been in the trenches. I have had the 50 case trial caseload where nothing had been discovered. And I also want to share that the witnesses and the victims hadn't been contacted in I don't know how long. So I was dealing with really upset people who hadn't been contacted in a long time. And I needed to bring them back on board to show up in court. Even though there's a subpoena, a lot of times people think subpoenas are optional. So you got to sweet talk people. You got to let them know, hey, I don't want to have to request the judge, issue a warrant, but that's what happens when you have a subpoena. So you really want to sweet talk people. So asking for a warrant is the last resort. So you want to have really good relationships with these people. Not only that, but there were victims in these cases. And they wanted to know what was happening with their case, and they hadn't been updated. And they were rightfully upset to not have any contact with anybody in months. It's not fair to them. So I walked into that caseload, and I was an inexperienced felony trial attorney. And one of the things that we needed to do in our cases is always run cases by a supervisor, because we might have an idea of what a case was worth. In other words, how long a person should be going to jail for, what kind of community service they needed to do. Was this a prison case or was this a jail case? What kinds of requirements do we want to have on this case to ensure that, justice has been served, right? So I walked into this caseload really feeling like I needed to prove myself because I was a newer attorney. I also felt like I believed that I needed to work really, really hard to prove myself. So the only thing I knew going into this caseload is that I needed to fix it. I needed to get all the discovery sent out. I needed to subpoena people. I needed to call people. But what I didn't have was a sense of how to prioritize. I didn't have a sense of okay, what is overwhelm? I didn't realize that overwhelm is something that I could control. I had no idea. I just thought, oh my gosh, I just can't breathe. I can't do anything. And I started to believe there was something wrong with me because I was in this paralysis. I couldn't focus. I couldn't get anything done. And one of the things that dragged this on a little bit is my lack of self awareness and asking myself what I needed, why I needed it, and the next step to go from there, which is why I'm doing this workshop, because so often we get caught up in the frustration that we don't see that there's a way out. We just think that this is the way it is, and I have to push through. I have to just get over it. I have to stop being lazy. I've got to have more willpower, when really there are solutions that can be so much easier and they can give you back so much energy and you won't be spinning your wheels. So here's one of the things that kept coming back to me was this gentleman who I took this caseload over for. Is he kept coming back to the office and saying, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. Don't worry about it. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. And he meant well. He really, really meant well. But there was part of me that hoped that he really would help me because it was so much. But there was also another part of me that knew, look, this guy's got a new caseload now. He's in another department. This really isn't for him to be doing anymore. This is my responsibility. But I started to get really angry and resentful. And I remember one day he came to my office one more time to say, I promise I'm going to help you. I promise, I promise, I promise. I said, look, stop promising me that you're going to come and help me. You're not going to help me. So please stop coming to my office telling me that. And after that, he stopped coming. But I was so angry. I was so frustrated that I snapped at him because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't even know that I was frustrated. I was just working my buns off, trying to keep my head above water, and it felt impossible. I would work all day. I would go home, bring work home, and then not do it. I would just stare at it in a corner and then feel bad about myself because I wasn't working on what was in those files. And then I would go back to the office the next day feeling horrible about myself because I was still, quote unquote, behind. I hadn't made any progress the night before. And it felt like I was on a hamster wheel. It felt like I couldn't make progress, that there was no way forward. And the one thing that I was not doing was asking myself how I was creating this situation, how I was creating the frustrations, how I was creating the overwhelm, how I was creating this resentment and feeling unenergized, exhausted when I got home, because I didn't know that I had anything to do with it. I really thought it was the work. I really thought it was this guy who hadn't done the work and left me with this caseload. And as long as I was blaming somebody else for how I felt, I would not be able to make progress on anything. As long as I was blaming someone else for feeling resentment or feeling like I was angry, right? Every time I felt angry, I thought it was because this person is because of this situation. And that prevented me from looking inside and saying, wait a minute, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, how am I responsible for this? I really encourage everybody who notices themselves blaming other people for how they feel to then turn that around and say, what if you couldn't blame anyone? You can't even blame yourself, okay? Don't turn this around and try to blame yourself for anything. But what if you couldn't blame anything on anyone and instead you just turned around and said, well, how might I be contributing to this situation? How might I be contributing to my own frustration? So for example, one of the things that I definitely contributed to here in my own frustrations was not going to a supervisor and asking for help to organize my mind around this caseload. And the reason I didn't reach out is because, one, this guy was so well liked. I didn't want it to seem like I was, and this was a phrase that was used in my office a lot at the time, throwing this guy under the bus. I didn't want anyone to think that I was really wallowing in self-pity, because that is a common reaction that so many law firms, this is from what I hear from all my clients, so many offices, they say, look, you figure it out. And they, behind your back and sometimes in front of your face, say, you shouldn't be complaining. You should suck it up, just do it. But we can benefit so much from the experience of somebody who's been in that situation before, who can help you really get organized. And another reason I didn't ask for help is because I thought it would reflect poorly on me. I thought it would mean that I was a bad attorney and that they would think that about me. They would think I couldn't handle it. And honestly, I couldn't, but I didn't want to admit that. I didn't want to ask for help. So that was something that was preventing me not looking inwards and asking myself what I needed, which was help, assistance in figuring out where I needed to focus my attention first. Then if I wasn't turning inwards and asking myself what I needed, I couldn't ask for it. And I wasn't getting over my ego because I had a really big ego. I thought I should know it all. And that egoic pride was something that made my life so much harder than it needed to be. It was causing so much frustration in my life. And that frustration was draining me. I was feeling overwhelmed. I didn't know how to handle my feelings. I didn't know even how to deal with basic emotions. And a big part of that was never being in touch with my emotions. So I talk a lot about feelings on this podcast. You probably heard, I talk about compassion. I talk about really starting to feel the feelings so you have an awareness around them. I didn't want to feel any of them because I thought those feelings meant I was bad and wrong, that there was something had gone wrong, that not just something had gone wrong, but there was something broken inside of me. But what I didn't realize, it was just there were so many frustrations and so many resentments and so much anger that I had that I didn't realize that was contributing to everything I was experiencing, because I was telling myself things should be different than they are right now. I was fighting with the reality of what this caseload was, of what my job was, of what my beliefs were. I didn't even know that my thoughts were creating my situation, what I believed was creating my situation. I needed some distance. And even at the time, if I didn't know about feelings or thoughts and how they create my feelings, that's okay. All I knew was I need help. And that's what I needed to do, is I needed to ask for help. So that just one little step would have prevented so much frustration, so much anger. And in that moment where I snapped at, and he was my friend too, it was just, I was very frustrated with this whole situation. That moment I snapped at him, I felt so guilty. I felt bad. And yes, he left a horrible caseload. I can't even sugarcoat it. But at the same time, he didn't have any tools either to manage his emotions around the caseload. He wasn't necessarily able to organize things well himself. He didn't know how to prioritize either. So I don't want to, as I'm rehashing this for you so you get the benefit of my hindsight, say that I blame him for anything, because it wasn't his fault. It was nobody's fault. If I wanted to look to somebody and how it was anyone's fault, is how was the legal profession, how was my office designed? It was not designed to give the skills that we needed to succeed as attorneys. And that really started in law school, because law school didn't do it either, which is part of the reason why I do this podcast. It's why I coach lawyers, is because we are not given the skills that we need. So looking back at this event, I can see where not knowing that I was creating frustration, or how I was contributing to frustration by doing things or not doing things, was really zapping me. It was really burning me out, because I didn't have the skills and I was afraid to ask for the skills. And as long as I was giving into fear, as long as I was not allowing myself to ask for what I needed, I was going to continue this hamster wheel of anger and frustration. And let me give you another example of where this comes up. And you may have experienced this yourself. Have you ever sat down to do some work and you just started feeling really agitated and you couldn't really put your finger on it? You were just really annoyed that you were doing this work. Well, this comes up a lot in my practice. Lawyers will tell me that they're feeling this, and I ask them, why do you think it is? And they say something like, well, I'm just doing all of this work and I'm getting so little for it. And if you are telling yourself a similar thing, then that's a big sign that you are resentful because you are not getting paid your value. And it may be if you're working for an office, maybe you're not getting paid your value and you need to ask for a raise. But it may also be that you are in your own office, you are running your own practice, and you're starting to recognize that you're feeling resentful towards some of the work that you're doing. And one of the questions to ask yourself in that situation is, well, how am I contributing to this? How am I creating this situation? Instead of saying, well, the client is expecting me to do an ungodly amount of work, or they're expecting me to do so much work for free, et cetera, I want you to question that. And that's what we're going to be doing in this workshop. We're going to be questioning the beliefs that you might have. We're going to be investigating where you're feeling resentment, agitation, frustration, and we're going to start digging in. And not only that, but we're going to start seeing where your solutions are. Sometimes it's a boundary that needs to be created. I know I was talking to a client recently, and we were talking about how she wasn't getting paid for certain work. And we were looking at how she contributed to that frustration. And that frustration was really caused by her not setting expectations up front and then ensuring that she was having the client follow through on signing an agreement and then her following through on ensuring that agreement was followed by the letter. So sometimes a boundary is something that needs to be had. Sometimes it's simply a question that needs to be asked, an uncomfortable conversation that needs to be had. There's many solutions, but only you will know the true solution. And so I want to invite you to come to this workshop because I am going to be asking you questions that might feel a little triggering too. They might be questions that, you get a little uncomfortable with because you haven't addressed them before, or because maybe you haven't really looked at how you may be contributing to the frustrations and the anger that you're feeling. And also, there may not be a lot of compassion towards yourself for seeing how you're contributing. So instead of recognizing, oh, wait a minute, I am contributing and let me solve it. Instead, you're saying, I'm contributing and I'm a bad attorney and I shouldn't be doing this and shame on me. They're very different approaches. And if you come from a habit of beating yourself up and shaming yourself for not working hard enough or being lazy or any of those things, then you're likely also going to feel confronted when somebody says something like, how are you contributing to the problem? And when I say contributing, some people are going to replace the word contributing with blame. How am I to blame for the problem? Well, that doesn't feel good, right? So this is a very non-judgmental workshop, but if you have that habit of beating yourself up and blaming yourself and telling yourself that you're bad or wrong or not good enough, you may hear some of the questions that I ask and feel triggered. But that's important to know. And it's important to face those things head on. When you notice that kind of triggering sensation, that's where you need to explore more. That's where you need to look more closely. That's where you need to take action. We're going to be talking about exactly how you can begin taking action so that you can reduce the frustrations. And not only that, but not beat yourself up for what's happening in your law practice right now. And when you do this, you're going to feel a boost in energy because all of the blaming, all of the frustration, all of the judgment, that is what zaps your energy. That's why you feel exhausted when you go home. It's not the work. It's how you're doing the work. It's who you're being while you're doing the work. If you are somebody who is compassionate towards yourself, knows what you want, speaks up for what you want, creates boundaries, and follows through on those boundaries, then you are going to have more energy. You are going to be less frustrated, less angry, less resentful. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And one of the most important parts of this workshop is going to be a conversation around boundary setting. I think so many people think boundaries are about going to war, really pushing back, making sure you get what's yours. Like it's a really defensive positioning when people think they're entering into a boundary setting, a boundary conversation. But that's not what a boundary is at all. A boundary does not come from defensiveness. It does not come from you being on your heels and this is a last resort and you telling somebody what you need. Like that's not a boundary. Boundary has nothing to do with what you tell somebody else. It's about what you do and how you behave. Everything about this workshop is going to be looking at how you are creating the results you have in your practice and how you can begin altering them. And a beautiful thing happens when you start looking inwards instead of looking outwards for the problem is you begin to see solutions and are able to take the reins. Because as long as the problem is outside of you, you can't have control. You can't make decisions for other people. You can't control how they behave or the choices that they make. But the thing that you do have control over is you, the way you behave, the choices that you make. And when you recognize that, you gain all your power back. You get all of your authority back. The frustrations and the anger, that is you giving away your power. That is you disempowering yourself. And that's really where I was in that story I told you earlier. I was disempowering myself every step of the way. And the more I did, the more angry and the more frustrated I was. And I want to share with you, if you feel hopeless in your practice, which I hear so much from lawyers, hopelessness is just a symptom of feeling frustrated. And I want you to come to this workshop because we need to talk about it. We need to talk about how you can regain your authority in your life and in your law practice. This is a real thing. If you're feeling hopeless, it's because you don't think you have any more power, that you can't do anything about it. But you absolutely can, whether it comes to resentment for doing work in your office, whether it comes to noticing people in your office and you notice that you're jealous, right? You get a little angry, you get a little frustrated because they seem to have it so easy. They seem to have it all together. Why is it so easy for them and so hard for you? What is wrong with me? Well, if you're having that kind of thought come up for you, if that's happening for you in your practice, come to this workshop. We need to talk about it because that is a really common thing too. I had a client who was noticing that she felt really resentful of another woman in her practice who really seemed to have it all. She had, so much support from family members. She had, a thriving practice, and it didn't seem like she was working as hard. And that was something that really ate at my client. And we started talking through it. I just started asking her questions, and she started to get this whole new perspective of this person and recognize that their life was not perfect. Recognize that she was also blessed, that my client was also blessed in so many ways, with so much support, with so much love, with so many resources, and that she just wasn't recognizing the resources she already had. Because often when we are frustrated and we're resentful of somebody else that we see on a day-to-day basis, that little bit of tinge of jealousy or envy, we aren't recognizing all of the pluses we have on our side, all of the benefits, all of the things we have going for us. All we're seeing, all we're telling ourselves about is the story of how this person has everything, and we're just not as abundant. We are not as blessed. So we're going to talk about this. If this is something you're experiencing, you are definitely someone who needs to come to this workshop. Because if you aren't addressing the frustrations and the anger, you become this ticking time bomb that can explode at any moment. You can snap at any moment, whether it's at home, whether it's with your partner. Maybe you start to notice yourself picking fights with a partner. I had a client. She and I were talking through an issue she was having with when she got home from work. She felt like her husband didn't care about her, wasn't paying attention to her, didn't love her because he was focusing on something else while she was making dinner. She wanted him to focus on her, and she wanted to have a conversation. But what she didn't ask herself is why he might be behaving the way he was doing. instead of blaming him for how she was feeling, unloved and how that was kind of steaming, like that was really simmering inside of her. She was starting to seethe with anger and resentment. Instead of recognizing those feelings and recognizing that she had control over them, she was blaming him for how she was feeling. So we took a look at it, and when we broke it down, it was so simple. She recognized that he needed something different when he came home. He needed to unwind differently, and that there were so many ways in which he showed his love in different ways. And so when she started recognizing that, she stopped picking fights with him, and she started really paying attention to herself and what she needed and started asking for what she needed. And that's a big thing that doesn't happen with lawyers, and so often female lawyers, is that we don't ask for what we want. We don't even stop to think about exactly what it is that we want. What is the result that we want? Do we want more time? Do we want more help around the house? Do we want somebody to acknowledge us and the hard work that we're doing? Um, do we want to have less work? What is it that we want? What's the end goal? I've been watching Scandal lately, and I've been binging it. It is just such a guilty pleasure. It's horrible. Everybody's horrible in that show. Like every single person, you can't like anybody in the show. It's one of those things. But it's watching a car wreck, right? You just got to watch it and stare at it and look what other horrible thing is somebody going to do to somebody else. So one of the things that Olivia Pope, who's the main character, always asks her clients is, what do you want? What do you want? Because she can't do anything about it until you tell her what you want. Same thing with you. If you don't ask yourself what you want, you can't do anything about it. You can't get what you want until you acknowledge what you want, and then you can ask for it. You can take steps to make it happen, but you've got to know what you want. And part of the reason I'm doing this workshop is because I want to give you the opportunity to start asking yourself that question in different areas of your life, whether it's in your law practice, whether it is in your home life. What do you want? And when you know what you want, then you can start to recognize, wait a minute, this is why I'm having frustrations. I'm not asking for what I want. I'm not asking for help. I'm not doing the things that are going to help me find peace. I'm not creating boundaries. I'm not enforcing a boundary. I'm not doing any of the things that would help me create what I want. But first, you got to know what you want. And then we can get to work with all the frustrations that are getting in the way of you having what you want. Because the only reason you're feeling frustrated, the only reason you're feeling resentful, the only reason you're feeling all of those icky emotions, that low-grade anger, is because you aren't asking for what you want. You may not even be aware of what you want. You might just feel annoyed and frustrated most of your day and think that's just the way it is being a lawyer. So you put on your happy face. You make sure that nobody knows that you're upset. You triple check your emails to make sure that there's no snark in them and nobody can chastise you for being mean to them. You are constantly venting to people in your office because you think that's what needs to happen. If I vent, then I am going to be able to release all this tension and anger that I'm feeling. But instead of that happening, what happens is you waste your time. You waste the time of the people around you. You agitate yourself more. And then you bring that into the rest of your day. And maybe you even bring it home. So I want you to question whether all this anger and frustration is necessary. And I think you can tell by my tone that it's not necessary. And I'm going to show you exactly how you can begin peeling that back, starting to create more peace in your practice, starting to feel more calm, more in control, more able to regulate yourself. And that's all inside of my new workshop, The Hidden Cost of Frustration in Your Law Practice. Stop getting angry and start reclaiming your time, energy, and sanity. You can register now at dinacataldo.com/frustrated lawyer. Now I want to give you a warning. And this is a warning I put on the website, by the way, because this is a real thing. This is not going to be a sit back and relax kind of workshop. In this workshop, I'm going to ask you to face uncomfortable truths head on. And in the process, you are going to transform yourself and your law practice. It's going to require you to show up, answer questions that you may have never asked yourself before. And the answers to those questions might feel uncomfortable. You may not like the things that you might need to do in order to take control of your practice, to take authority back in your life. But I have some good news for you. Growth is always on the other side of discomfort. You will see problems more clearly, but you're also going to be able to see solutions more clearly, and you're going to be able to take actions on those solutions quicker the more you practice this. All right. So register for this workshop. Go to dinacataldo.com/frustrated lawyer and start to take back your authority. You are going to re-energize yourself. You will re-energize your practice. You are going to stop feeling so annoyed during the day, stop feeling so angry and frustrated so much during the day. And you're going to wonder why you never asked yourself these questions before, because it's costing you so much to stay in this suffering. It's costing you energy ruminating about how your day went sideways or how you waste your time just seething at your desk as you read another email from opposing counsel and you're thinking about how this person is such an idiot and how they shouldn't even be talking to you about this topic. You are probably feeling exhausted at the end of the day, wondering why you're so exhausted. And you're also going to notice something else. You're going to notice that you stop avoiding difficult things or things that you think are difficult now, like asking for help from your assistant, delegating the things that you need to do. They're going to become easier when you start recognizing that putting on a fake smile and pretending everything is okay and just trying to make it through your day, it's actually harder to do that than to face these hard truths head on and take action on solving them. So go to dinacataldo.com/frustrated lawyer right now and sign up for this workshop. I promise you, you will not regret it. You are going to make so many changes on the other side of this workshop. You're not going to recognize your practice or yourself. All right, my friend, have a beautiful rest of your week. I'll talk to you soon.